Hello, beautiful. I'm your host, Nicole Goff. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast, the podcast for women who want it all. Health, wealth, freedom, authenticity, love, beauty, all of the hidden gems just waiting to be uncovered. This is the podcast for women who are ready to discover their inner creatrix, to discover their inner manifester, and who want to find the ecstatic in every day. This is a freaking squeaky chair, too.
What the heck? They really we need to help them out. We need assistance.
We need an upgrade here.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Ecstatic Life Podcast. I'm host Nicole Goff, and I am here today with my friend Amber Melendy. And Amber is a passionate mindfulness guide and educator who uses quantum tools like human design, which we are going to talk about today, to help others activate and access their unique purpose here on Earth. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you, Nicole. It's good to be here.
Yes, I am so glad you're here.
Thanks.
This has been like 2 months in the works to make this happen. And here we are in person in the not so wonderful studio in Curia. Sorry, anybody from Curia, if you're listening to this podcast, but like, can we not have the room be painted green? Can we upgrade the lighting? And I can't even get the equipment here to work, so.
Work in progress. Yes.
Yes. I can't wait to have my own studio, and it will definitely be like cozier and like bohemian and warm and not feeling like I'm in a hospital room.
I'm envisioning that now, and it feels so good to imagine.
This is like the color of hospital scrubs.
It is.
And it makes me look dead. I got light. The last 2 times I was in here, I literally looked like a zombie.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I aged like 15 years on that podcast because of the color in here. It's so bad.
It is.
Oh, all right, well, enough complaining. This is the Ecstatic Life Podcast. It is not about complaining. It is about modalities that make your life more ecstatic. And so I brought Amber on today because I want her to introduce you all to human design. And Amber did my human design, what has it been, like a year and a half ago about?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it was like a Christmas present. You had a special. Right. It was a Christmas present I bought for myself. And it was like life-changing to have that blueprint of my design just was so enlightening and opened my eyes up so much to the inner workings of myself and like why I am the way I am and why I'm doing the things that I do and why I prefer the things that I prefer. And I mean, I know I just scratched the surface with it and I would like to go deeper, but just that little bit of knowledge has been so helpful for me. And so I'd really like to, I think maybe it's kind of getting out there in the field a little more, but I'd really like to open my audience up to it if they haven't heard about it or if they have and they want to know more. So I guess we should start with a little background about yourself and then we can go into what is human design.
Okay. So for 20 years I have been awakening to the ancient wisdom traditions. In 2004, I was introduced to both Waldorf education and yoga, and my life quickly changed within a couple months. Having a regular meditation practice, I had a transcendental experience where I can't even really put it into words, but I was one with everything and everything was one with me. And I was raised in a very small town as a Catholic young girl going to a Catholic school and very small school with very small number of children in my classes. And when I was 4 years old, I actually came to Florida on a vacation, and my whole world was like, I need to go back there as soon as I can. And at age 19, it was my first chance to come back. And then right in my first Saturn return, so around age 28 years old, I was open, my mind opened more fully to these ancient wisdom traditions, and it led me on a deep investigation and journey of which I'm still on. and just collecting more tools to guide others in the now and accessing the fullness of their potential. Yoga, meditation, Waldorf education, these are ways that are all about the coherency of both the left and the right hemispheres of the brain so that we can be or access our full creative genius in the now. And when I found human design, which is maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I had already been on a path of yoga and mindfulness and meditating for over 10 years. And I received my design from my guide. I actually studied with a mentor for 6 months, and she taught me the mechanics of the system. And as I learned my blueprint, I realized that yoga and mindfulness and my path as a teacher and a guide of that ancient wisdom tradition allowed me to access the keys within myself, and that I learned human design through meditation, through yoga. And so I had now this blueprint that I had discovered on my own, but was telling me something that I had to discover for like 10, 12 years of my own inner investigation. And it blew my mind. And then I realized that Ra Uruhu, who is the person who brought this system here, he received this information from a voice over 8 days and 8 nights. And he said that he was told that this is for the children. This is a system that he received in 1987. It's brought here for the children because right now we're in a strong time on the earth plane, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
And it is difficult. And there's a lot of challenges to awakening to our inner wisdom, to our inner voice. And everything in the materialistic world is really against our nature, and it's forcing us to go inside. And so human design is such an incredible synthesis of Kabbalah, like these ancient wisdom traditions. So Kabbalah, the I Ching, the Vedic Chakra system, astrology, and quantum biomechanics. And it's very unique because when you study something like astrology, you look at the birth time and place of a person, and it gives you a chart, and you look at that person in relationship to the cosmos. Human design looks at 2 times. So you look at the birth time and place, but you also look at 88 degrees before a person was born. And so that's still when you're in utero, in your mother's womb.
And why do you look at that?
So it's such an interesting chart because there are actually 2 sides to it. There's the red side, which is called the design side, and it's our unconsciousness or subconsciousness. And then we have our mind side, which is our consciousness. So the idea is, if we can learn our body's operating system, which is unconscious, it's subconscious. So that's why we see so much difficulty in the world, is because we're all acting from a lot of unconsciousness. And if we understand how to support the body, and that's why yoga is so powerful, Tai Chi, Qigong, because it creates a spaciousness. So if we can effectively create a spaciousness, then we're able to really serve the other through our mind, through our consciousness. Mm-hmm. And it just resonated so deeply because in Waldorf education, it's the hands, the heart, and the head. And we're here, the hands are an extension of the heart, right? So we're here to serve the other with our heart. But we get really tripped up because we don't have that body attunement or awareness. And so human design, it's not a belief system. It can be very much confused in this materialistic world, and people can attach to the definitions or cling to the ideas, the boxes. And that's where we get in trouble, because it's all to be held loosely and to be experimented with. So human design can provide a toolbox for both the body and the mind, and something that people cannot cling to, but rather explore in their daily life and see what works, what doesn't work, what resonates, what doesn't resonate. And it's a process, it's a journey of discovery, of self-discovery. So just even asking the questions and looking at thyself creates a spaciousness. And just that alone is transformative.
Yeah, and that was my experience, definitely. Just this bringing the idea that this design was there, and it resonated so much more than just astrology, which I had been interested in for a lot of years, and I wouldn't say I studied it deeply, but I definitely referenced it, and not just in the media, pop culture kind of way that you can see, going around a lot today. But it didn't go as deep. And so what you're saying is that it brings in that astrology, but it doesn't just look at your birth time, which I'm hearing that the birth time is the conscious, and then the 88 degrees before birth is the unconscious, the subconscious stuff that's going on, which is really cool that's kind of like following you everywhere, and that you can track that.
Yes.
But then you said it also brings in the I Ching.
Mm-hmm.
And what were the other?
Kabbalah. Yep. And the Vedic Chakra system.
And the Vedic Chakras.
And it's a quantum biomechanics system. So there's all these mechanics in two different operating systems, the body and the mind.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's important. That's an important distinction too. Because like you said, a lot of us, we're all up here all day. We're all up here in the mind. We're all in our little hamster wheels, and we have been so disconnected from the heart and the body. Yeah. And in this culture, in this modern culture, especially in this modern Western culture that we see right now, there's so many that this separation. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's so many children that walk around on tiptoes now. Mm-hmm. It's almost like people are trying to leave their bodies.
Right.
That they're trying to actually, their consciousness is trying to separate. People are so afraid, and I see this a lot in the birth system too. Women, they're trying to escape their bodies in birth instead of going deep into their bodies, instead of grounding into the experience. And so, yeah, we're so disconnected. And there are two separate experiences, but being able to merge those into one. And unless you take the time through mindfulness and meditation and yoga and these kinds of practices to integrate that, to reintegrate it, it's really hard. And that's what I see so much, walking around in my day-to-day life. It's so much you're seeing people more and more separate and going up into the headspace.
Yes, let me say. So what happens is we use the mind to make decisions. Mm-hmm. So that's when you're speaking, that's one thing that human design is so powerful for, because it teaches you that instead of making decisions from your head, from your mind, we give the tools to learn what are the body cues, what are the signs for each unique person, what is their authority, their body authority. And that is what we can learn to make decisions from there, so that we're not pulled, because you're right, there's so much desire to get off this plane, because it is permeated with that fear consciousness, lack, victim consciousness.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I see that all over. And so when you're talking about getting in touch with the body, this is learning, it's splenic, and these are learning the body part that your design is most attuned with, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we could get into the mechanics of it a little bit, how it is actually done.
Well, we can do a little bit. I don't want to go too much just because it can feel very overwhelming, but probably a lot of people are familiar with the 7 main chakras or chakras. And these are energy centers, right? So in yoga and a lot of the information out there, you see these 7 main energy centers. And what they do is they take in information, integrate information, and then output information, right? So it's like a constant movement. And according to human design, we are in a mutation actually right now, and we're moving from the 7-centered consciousness, which is the 7 chakras, which is the old system, into a 9-centered consciousness.
Really? This is the first time I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so this 9-centered consciousness is actually birthing a new way, a new humanity. And that's why we are going through such deep transformative processes. And it is so difficult because, fire is what is transforming us, and that inner fire, and sometimes we burn in all these different ways, or through crises and shock. We are transforming because as a human being, we want comfort, we want safety, we want protection, and we received that as tribal beings, right? But it wasn't fully individual, because in the tribe, it was like with a bargain. You had to give up something to be a part of something. And so we're in this time now where we are becoming individualized, where each person is able to find their own inner truth. And so this system looks at, instead of 7 energy centers, there's 9 of these chakras, or energy centers, also connected to the tree of life. And it's through these centers where things happen, things move, and we have a blueprint, we have a design. But then when I come in contact with you, there's a new entity or energy that's here with us because it's together. If we had a third person, it would be another, like it would be even different, right? And then depending on the stars alignment in the now, it's also different. And so it's always changing. And so in these energy centers, we have these hookups that connect to other people and to the planets and the stars. And through these centers, we receive our understanding of our perception. And so when we're just alone with ourselves, we have a blueprint, and we can get to learn that how we receive information, how we understand, how we process, and then therefore what our perceptions are and what our motivations are. And the more that we sit in meditation or we do these consciousness practices, the more aware that we can be. Human design can teach us, and it's still just as essential to do these practices because it can expand you so much more, in addition to help you decondition quicker, because it is said that it takes 7 years to decondition or deprogram, because there's so much that we come in with. And when we're born into a family, the family unit is already 3. If you have, many people aren't being raised with a mom and a dad anymore. It's different configurations, and that's fine. But typically it might be 2 adults, or maybe just 1 adult and a child, and maybe there's another child. But as soon as you have 3, you are now a penta, and it's a set energy. And so this is why actually there's a lot of challenges in relationships, because if there's a set energy, there's gaps. There's things that are missing, and they'll always be missing. And they won't actually be missing, but it's a perception that they're not there. So it's very interesting how our consciousness works.
Is this why we try to hook up with other people that fill those gaps?
Exactly.
Because we're looking to reintegrate. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you asked, I went off on a little tangent, but now we'll come back to, you asked about these different energy centers, and we all have like an energetic signature. And this is a good way of looking at some of the basic understanding of how our aura operates, and if we're actually life-giving or if we're life-taking, if that makes sense. And so the energetic
like the
signature,
energy vampire in some way, when you say like life-taking, like somebody that's taking that energy from someone else.
Well, it could be that, but we can do that to ourselves, right? With our state of consciousness.
So for draining ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for you as a manifestor type, you're a very unique type, and only 9% of the population have your aura type. And your energetic signature is when you're in your life-giving or the fullness of your capacity, you're at peace. Like when you're, loving what you're doing, when you're at home and everything's flowing with your children, the peace that is there is like you're on it. But when you're not, anger is that not self part of you. For me, as I'm a manifesting generator, and so my not self is frustration. And myself, when I'm in my flow and the fullness of myself, is a deep satisfaction. And so we have these different signatures, and that's like a kind of a way that we can see, are we aligned with our body? Are we finding that relaxation, that satisfaction, peace? Another one is a true embodied success, not success in the materialistic world, although that can come, but when we feel so aligned and embodied that we feel successful. And the other signature is, so the not self of that is bitterness. And then the final one is the wonder and delight, when we really experience that. And if we don't, we experience disappointment in the not self. So these are kind of clues that give us sort of an understanding. Are we aligned with our body? Are we finding these aspects of ourself that feel coherent, that feel in harmony, or not? And if we're making decisions a lot from our head, we might be frustrated a lot or angry a lot. And then we know something needs to change. Yeah. We're not finding our alignment.
But first you do have to look in. So like you were saying, going back to, the meditation or the yoga or these practices, even just checking in with yourself, checking in with your body, a moment of stillness, closing your eyes. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? Because without that time for the reflection, without taking that time, having the blueprint isn't, it gives you the framework, but you're not able to integrate it in that same way. Because I know for me, when I started practicing mindfulness, when I started practicing meditation, like some of the stuff that came up was painful because I had been suppressing it. I had been ignoring it. I didn't want to feel those feelings. I didn't want to feel the anger. I didn't want to feel the frustration. And so I ignored it. And so getting still allowed those feelings to come up and be witnessed. And it was a process, definitely. But what it gives you in the other side of it, the freedom in being able to witness your emotions and then let them go, witness them, say thank you, and move on, is just so much better.
Yes, energy in motion, emotion.
Yep.
And one thing that, so there is an aspect of human design, the I Ching part, that looks at the 64 hexagrams, which is the ancient Chinese system. And Richard Rudd has created the gene keys, and it is a wonderful system in and of itself. And the first thing that system teaches is the art of contemplation, which is what you're really speaking of, because if we don't know how to go inside and take that time and sit with ourselves, and it's a practice because some days sitting with yourself is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right? It is so difficult because
especially when you have the trauma also.
Yes.
And that was for me coming from a place of I had PTSD, and sitting with myself at first was very painful.
Right.
Even taking 3 minutes to try to meditate was physically painful to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be. And then also like the cell phones, the distraction.
Yes.
It's so easy. Everything is so busy, you know, and so yeah, it's hard. It has to be a practice.
Yes. Yes. I have been now meditating for 20 years, and I have gone through years where it is so difficult that even that 3 to 5 minute threshold is so challenging, you know, and then you have to learn how to bring different components. That's how I got into more somatic work, because sometimes it's like the trauma is so on the surface that we won't let ourselves drop in. And so then we need that somatic unwinding where we vocalize and move like an octopus in the sea. And
ecstatic dance.
Or ecstatic dance, yeah. Something that helps us to move that energy, that because the fire that is on the planet right now, I mean, we see all the natural destruction that's happening, all the disasters that are happening, that is present everywhere, right? The waters are polluted, we are more than 70% water. So when our emotion is so stuck because the fight, flight, freeze is not, like the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system aren't able to move back and forth freely, we get locked in those patterns. So then sitting with ourselves for 3 minutes is terrifying.
Yeah.
So we have to then cultivate a different practice, because sometimes, sitting in meditation with your spine upright and focusing on your breath is like hell. Yeah. I don't want to do that. So find me some. That's why, like, in the last 20 years, it's such a blessing that there are all these new practices that are really coming online to help move that trauma, and so many practitioners teaching these ways. Thank Goddess.
Yeah, I had Nick DeVerde on recently, and he is a trauma-informed yoga practitioner.
Nice.
And he's here in Gainesville too.
Nice.
And so yeah, there's so much now. I think people are waking up to this, and yeah, you're right. Thank Goddess.
Yes.
So I'm really curious. You said that you go by a 9 chakra system instead of the traditional 7 chakra system. What are the additional 2 chakras that are being added at the moment?
Yeah. So there are basically, I guess the ones being added are the spleen center. So this center is all about our intuition, our sense of knowingness. It also has to do with the health of our body, and this is where there's a lot of fear gates, actually, and that's what I'll say about that one. The solar plexus center is just in a different place, but we have a solar plexus in the 7 chakra center, but this is where the mutation is happening. So it's one to speak of, and we can see that, right? Because the emotions that we're speaking of, which is why this earth is so difficult as human beings, because how do we deal with emotions? How do we deal with these patterns? And the patterns have a shadow aspect. Mm-hmm. They have a gift aspect. And the highest frequency is called the siddhic aspect. And that's a Sanskrit term. and it is the highest gift possible. And it's attainable not through forcefulness, but through a deep surrender. So the shadow doesn't go away. It's not like you do all this self-help, self-discovery, learn your human design, yoga, meditate all day, and then somehow you're not going to have a shadow. It doesn't work like that. We all are going to have shadow aspects that the hope is that we actually are able to see them. And instead of react, which brings about suffering, we respond with consciousness, with awareness. And that's when we don't feel threatened, right? And so this solar plexus center, it has a deep, powerful mutation that's occurring right now in this 9-centered consciousness. And even though we have that in our 7 centers, I wanted to bring that up because it's an expanded role from my earlier studies of the ancient wisdom traditions and yoga. So the other one that isn't mentioned in the 7-centered consciousness is called the G center, and it is our direction. And it is said that it is sort of our we are pulled on a string and we are guided in our life, and we can I mean, it's debatable, right, of are we predestined? How much are we in control? Yeah. I like to believe it's a mix of both from what I've seen. Yeah. I'm very much like not into black and white thinking. Yeah. And I'm very much into like, it's usually both. You know, it's usually some kind of a balance. When you're in harmony, it's usually some kind of a balance between the both. And in talking about your light self and your shadow self, it's the same thing. It's the integration. So if you try to ignore the shadow and block out the shadow or deny it, then it starts to take over. And it's like the skeletons in the closet, you know, and it starts to come out and show itself in ugly ways. But when you're able to sit with your shadow and look at it and integrate it and understand it as part of yourself that is not bad and evil and shameful and wrong and something that needs to be suppressed, but rather something that needs to be tended to and cared for, just like your light side. And, you know, it's not that you encourage your shadow to take over and dominate and, you know, but that you recognize that it is a part of you and you honor it like you honor all the parts of you. No bad parts. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
So one of the things that I always like to ask people that I interview is how the practice that we're talking about can make your life more ecstatic. So what would you say to somebody that would be interested in learning human design? How would having their human design read and learning about it make their life more ecstatic?
Great question. Well, I think the best answer that I could give right now is that I have done many readings with many people, and what happens a lot of times is that the conditioning and programming in our life from other people, it can be so deep and so challenging. And when you get a glimpse of your unique blueprint, there's always like I know that.
Permission.
But I have not allowed myself, I have not given myself permission because of XYZ, so many numbers of things. My mom used to get on my case because I was like this. My partner does this because of this. My kids this. You know, there's all these things that kind of butt up in the face of that unique part of us. And when you understand that this is who you are, and you have someone sit in front of you and say, look, this is your unique self, and here are some interesting features, it's like, wow, I feel validated and seen, and now I give myself 100% permission to be who I am. And it's usually not that somebody doesn't know it, but that they never allowed the fullness of their self to be seen, to be heard.
Hello, beautiful. How does your morning routine make you feel? Are you jumping out of bed, full of energy, ready to tackle the day? Or are you waking up groggy to a blaring alarm and going straight for your cup of coffee in order to fuel your misery? I can tell you, a couple of years ago, I was in the latter category. But now I wake up every day, well, nearly every day, ecstatic about life. And because of that, I decided to create a series of workshops called Ecstatic Habits, which are the daily practices that I use to bring more joy, health and wellness, passion, energy, and vitality into my life. The first in this series is my 7-day detox course, and it has just launched. In this workshop, I teach simple, effective, and gentle methods of detoxification that work with your body's natural detox pathways. These detoxification habits can help you eliminate bloat, skin problems, brain fog, fatigue, headaches, and so much more. And I've put it all together in an easy-to-follow, guided, step-by-step process, including a whole week's worth of videos, PDF instructions, recipes, and more support. So head over to my website, NicoleGoffSpeaks.com, and check out my offers tab and sign up for the 7-day detox if you are ready to make your life more ecstatic.
And for a lot of reasons, that can be because sometimes our greatest challenges, or oftentimes actually, our greatest challenges are the greatest gifts that we have. So for example, someone that I'm really close to has an incarnation cross of tension. So her whole life, her actual mission and purpose in this life is to actually bring up tensions in relationship so that she can effectively connect more closely to spirit and allow for the dissolution of that tension in the now. And that's her greatest gift, but she was always shamed for this aspect of her that she was always involved in, because in all her relations she would create tension. And so there's all these interesting components that are happening, and it is such a process of awakening to who we are and making peace so that we cannot be ashamed of that part, but allow our colors to fly free, not to, to uplift, to empower, to inspire.
Yeah, and that was the exact experience I had. That was the exact experience. It was like just a breath of like, relief. Like, it's okay that I'm like that, and it's, the same, having been, kind of put down because I was too much, the too muchness, like Nicole's just too out there, Nicole's just too loud and too, whatever, all the too muches. Yeah. And so in getting, in reading my design, I was like, that's just who I am, and that's okay. And then, what did I do? I immediately go out and I started putting myself out there more. Like, okay, I'm going to start a podcast, and it's not shameful for me to want to be out there. It's like that's living my purpose. So it did. It's like it gave me permission to be me when I had been conditioned by so many people. And it's usually in childhood and adolescence, and then stuff gets piled on, not by well-meaning adult caregivers and whatever, but they pile things on, and it conditions you to think that your natural state of being, your innate deep self, your soul is wrong and bad.
Yep.
And that's so painful. And I think that's the way most of us are walking around. And I have to wonder too if it's not part of our soul purpose to, again, connect with these people that, you know, cause us that friction. Because, you know, if you just come in and everything's perfect, well, what's the point? There's no lesson to learn.
That's right.
So you have to come up with that, you know, friction, that conflict, so that you can have a spot to grow from. But it's painful, and a lot of people never get past that. They never get to looking inside and finding their true self. They're stuck in the I'm bad and wrong and shameful, you know, reality, and then they live their entire lives in that. So yeah, definitely from my perspective, it made my life much more ecstatic to have this information, to have that blueprint.
Yes.
And to be able to look at myself in this way that gave me permission. It was a permission slip.
Yes.
To be me.
100%.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything, maybe like a kind of a brief overview that you could give based on my design, that like if somebody were going to come to you and have their design read, like what could they expect to have happen? How would you walk them through this process? What would they get out of it? What would they give?
Well, at this point, I have changed a little bit of the way that I'm working with people. So I typically have a pretty extensive form that I have someone fill out, and then I like to have a brief conversation or listening of where they're at and what it is that they're looking for. There's so many ways to investigate this system. Human design is the overarching system, but there are systems within human design. So there's also something called primary health system and rave psychology. And these two systems are sort of like cracking the code in a deeper way of understanding, and I think I got into that with you, of basically how you digest not just your food, but the information in your life as well. So when you get your digestion correct and you are in the correct types of environments, then you're able to be motivated and have correct perception.
So with that part, I just want a personal experience interject. Mine was eating the same foods on a regular basis and sticking with a small subset of foods. And I had thought that I was a person that liked to like experiment a lot, but in practice I would get in these routines where it was like rice and veggies and meat every single night, rice and veggies and meat, and my family were like, rice and veggies and meat again. And then I saw like, oh, that's because that's how my body prefers to digest, and that again was the permission that I needed to say, okay, so that's what's best for me, but maybe that's not what's best for everybody in my family. Right. So I try to switch it up some, but again with the permission to like, oh, that's why I get into these patterns where I just cook the same thing over and over and over, because my body likes that.
Right. So there's a couple ways to work with human design. And the first step is really to understand the beginning of the podcast. We talked about your energetic signature, understanding how your aura operates. That's the main thing. And even if you just know that and you just work with that one thing, it can be hugely transformative. Sometimes the problem is too much information. So human design can be a lot. So the smaller maybe doses, the better. So I like to work in a step-by-step process. Teach the basics, and then you can go a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper. And I offer reports. I offer one-on-one Zoom calls or sessions, and I can do just a simple reading and give you some basic, like a good toolbox, an emotional and kinesthetic toolbox. Understand how your body's design works and your mind's design works, and work with these basic things. And then more extensively, if somebody is really ready to do a deep dive, then I like to work with that person for 2 or 3 months. And because I am a 20-year meditator and I like to go deep, and I really, really want to help someone embody their uniqueness, and sometimes that's a process, I offer packages where we can do a deep dive over a few months and really help a person to explore the depth of their body-mind operating system. So there's a lot of ways, and it really just depends on what someone is wanting, and they all are effective.
Yeah, I think I'm ready for the deep dive now to take like the second step into it. I've listened to the recording that you gave me, I think 3 times in full, and have gone back to it a couple other times. But each time I re-listen to it, I get more out of it, you know. But I know there was a part of it that said, in environment-wise, I do good in environments that are expansive and especially overlooking water, which I'm a triple Pisces, and it makes absolutely perfect sense why I love like being at the beach and being at the springs and, you know, just that expansive view. And so actually after that, I ended up buying a house on a lake. And I won't say it's because the human design told me to, but I'd always lived in the woods. And I'm like, oh, maybe part of my unhappiness is being closed in. And I've always liked houses that had open floor plans. And I've always liked, you know, like the kitchen and the living room and everything being connected. I like being in fields. I like that. It makes me feel safe.
Yeah.
And so it really resonated with me and made sense. And so it wasn't long after that I started looking for a new house. And I specifically went after something with a lake view, which luckily we're in an area where there's like 1,000 lakes around us. Yes. So it's easy to find. But, you know, I have now, you know, I have a back porch balcony that overlooks a lake. And it's just, I go out there and I feel energized. I feel at peace. And so having that information was just super helpful for me. But yeah, so I do feel like now, you know, I've taken that. And I think it's like a 45-minute recording. Like, it's a very in-depth recording that you did. And I've taken that and I've listened to it and integrated that. But I'm probably now ready to take the next step and do more of the one-on-one and more coaching with it. So yeah, this conversation is giving me the motivation to jump in.
I love that. I love all of that. And I love that you found the perfect place that could support you in your full motivation and perception, and that's why you're doing this amazing Ecstatic Life podcast, and you're just rocking it.
Yeah, well, it really was
nice
like
work.
It came into my, in the same way that ecstatic dance came into my consciousness in this way. It came into my awareness, and then all of a sudden I saw, just right after it came into my awareness, and I was like, ooh, that's something that I would like to find out more about. I saw people talking about it on Instagram, actually. Some people I follow on Instagram are talking about it, and I'm like, what is this human design? This is, and they're using words like, you know, oh, I'm a splenic, and I'm like, what does this mean? I want to know more. And then, yeah, a Christmas special popped up from you, and I was like, oh, perfect. And I just knew this is something I need to do. In the same way with ecstatic dance, I started, it just popped into my head randomly. Ecstatic dance. That's something I think I need to look into. And I started Googling it. And I was at a party that weekend, and the woman hosting the party said, I host ecstatic dances at my house, and there's one next weekend. And I was like, I literally just Googled what ecstatic dance was. It's a sign. So yeah. And if somebody is feeling called, if they're listening to this and they're like, oh, I want to know more. Like, I want to learn more about myself. I want my blueprint made. How can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you? Like, how can someone reach out if they want to have their human design done with you?
So my website is Amber Melendy, MELENDY.com. And another site is heartrootparenting.com. As an educator, I'm really passionate about bringing this system to parents and teaching the parents their unique design, as well teaching them their kids' unique design, so that we can just help the long process of deconditioning that all of us adults have to go through, and save the kids. And when the parents understand their kids' design, it allows them to help to not be so reactive to the behavioral patterns, because it's all in the chart. So that's a good one.
Do you do any in-person events or anything like that in Gainesville? Is there an in-person aspect to this, or is this something more that you just do individually with someone through Zoom?
Yeah, right now I'm doing mostly on Zoom. I do have an office, but it's pretty small. I've thought about doing human design workshops and just teaching people the basic mechanics. I actually am going to start teaching online, a small group of people that want to go deep and learn the system to break down the mechanics over time. But right now, online is my best vehicle that I'm working with people on. Eventually, maybe I'll find a space that resonates and I can do more in person.
Cool.
Or like multi-person work. But right now, it's pretty much one-on-one or small groups.
Everything's moving to the online space, and I have mixed feelings because I love like this is the first in-person interview I've done on the podcast, and there's just such a different vibe because like you said, when your energy is overlapping with someone else's energy, you're creating this third energy, you know? Right. And so it's like it's different when you can get face to face with someone. That I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect when you're working online, that I don't know how to bridge that gap. I'm just I guess just, you know.
It's an important thing to contemplate because we need both. We're so sucked into the technology piece, but back to nature is where it's at.
But it's such a blessing too, because being able to get these messages out to thousands of people would have been impossible not that long ago, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like this blessing and a curse, and I oscillate in there, like how much to embrace the technology and how much to embrace in person, and it's a balance.
It is.
And I'm very happy to talk about the kids and learning the kids' design, because honestly that's something that I try to be very conscious of in my parenting, is respecting my kids' individuality. So I have a lot of kids, but I should have all of their designs done also, and that would definitely give me some more insight, I'm sure. But
it's very helpful. And then in a family you make a penta, like I said, 3 to 5 people. So actually you're over that. So then you're a wa. So, and that is even a different energetic structure. And that's more for another day. But it is helpful to understand certain things. But if you understand your design and your nature, that also just allows you to be more fluid, a better listener, have more spaciousness. So then you're naturally able to listen to the children, and then from there, that's all we really need, right? It's just when we're in our stress, energy, and reactive self that it's overwhelming, and then we start bringing our shadow patterns that then obstruct the flow or hijack the space. Mm-hmm. So
casting our shadows on the family. Yeah. So that'll be part 2. Yeah. I'll get my whole family done. And the wa giant,
you're awesome.
7-person family done. Yes. And then we'll have a part 2. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being my first in person. And I will put links in the show notes how to work with you and how to get in touch with you. Any last comments for the listeners before we sign off?
Yeah, we're in an interesting time, and human design is just one system, but really the idea of it all is to be back to nature. You know, the materialistic technological world has its place, but like you said, it has to be balanced. So find the balance every day. What brings you, what makes you ecstatic, you know? What feeds your soul? What makes you come alive? Do more of that, because you don't have to spend money or learn a system. These are helpful tools, but the real, the best thing you can do is to find what brings you alive, and do more of those kinds of things. And little by little, you'll find more balance in your life. And life is such a gift, and presence is a present. So thank you, Nicole, for having me today. It was so much fun.
Aho.
Aho.